We are now live. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Lisa. I will call the meeting to order. I'll remind everyone to please disclose of any pecuniary interest at the appropriate time. And the third item on our agenda is an update from Dr. Renaday. Dr. Renaday, are you online with us? There he is. Perfect. I'm going to ask you to turn your mic up a little bit.
At 100, so we just have to wait a second. It'll get there.
Yep. There we go.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
There we go. Okay. Should I start?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So lots going on. I'll try to keep the structure to our conversation in a few kind of baskets so we can stay focused on it. So I'll talk a little bit about cases and outbreaks. I'll talk a little bit about variants and what we know about those, and then I'll talk a little bit about vaccines. And then if there are other things, we can talk about them as needed. So, we have had, as of yesterday's report, just, 3 cases in the last 24 hours, but 52 cases sort of over the weekend, which is a little bit concerning in terms of the uptick of the number of cases, but largely those cases were linked to existing outbreaks or existing clusters that we're investigating. And so that's a different, picture from, widespread sort of transmission where we don't know where it's coming from. But having said that, it's still concerning. So that brings our overall total through the pandemic to 1,961 cases. We had 28 more recoveries since last Friday. That brought us up to 1,831. And as of yesterday, we had 8 institutional outbreaks, 1 workplace outbreak, and so far no outbreaks in schools since the restart of schools. But it's just been a very short time since then. So in terms of the outbreaks, there's a few that are particularly challenging that we're working with some central ministries on, specifically a correctional facility that has challenges due to the nature of the facility itself and the ability to actually implement infection prevention and control measures in it. So we're trying to work on that piece, but recognizing that the nature of the facility is such that spread can happen quite quickly, and that's what we've seen. So that's one thing. The other thing is if we move to variants, so there's all of this talk about variants of concern. It's important to remember that viruses mutate very frequently, right? So there are lots of different strains of viruses, and so we'd expect that with the coronavirus. One of the things that we're seeing with some of these strains is that they may be more transmissible. There's some data that shows that they may actually have a slightly longer period of infectivity. So those details are still being worked out. I think the more important point is at the level of the population, what do these variants do? Are they more severe? Are they, and so far there's no indication that they are more severe, but there is indication that they are more transmissible. And so really the same public health measures applied sort of diligently can help to protect against all of the variants just as much as it can help to protect against, I suppose, whatever you're calling COVID before all these variants were discovered, right? But now I think variants are the new playing field. There are all sorts of variants out there, and some of them are going to be more important than others. But so far, there's nothing that is meeting a threshold of severity that we want to that merits doing something specifically differently about them. And then finally, in terms of vaccines, so the doses that we received, we've been able to give them to the long-term care homes and high-risk retirement home residents as well. So now that we're getting more vaccines, we should be getting some more next week, so we can start planning for, the long-term care home staff and essential caregivers. I'd like to also plan for the remaining retirement homes that were not listed as high risk. I think certainly our experience here has shown us that they are high risk and that those folks need to be protected if they're seniors living in a congregate setting with shared dining and shared, so we're looking at protecting those folks as well. And then there's a list of the next immediate priority, which is really a set of healthcare workers and some other folks who have been designated as the next immediate priority. So we'll try to get a plan in place to immunize those folks. And then just remember, as we get more and more vaccine, we're going to start rolling it out to different groups of people. The province has included people over 80 on its list of phase 1 vaccines. I think that's a really good decision. Again, none of these groups can be gotten to unless we have enough vaccine in the first place. So when we start getting more vaccine, we can start planning to get to all of those other groups, which are included in phase 1. And there are lots of plans to get that running at different sites, fixed sites, and a small amount of mobile ability to get to people who are in settings where they can't leave to make sure that we can get vaccines to those folks as well. So lots of work going on there, but again, it's the get the vaccines and then deliver them, and we need those vaccines, right? A few other things to note. There's ongoing discussion about things like Astrazeneca vaccines, and that's a fridge stable vaccine, which even if we could get that rolled out in terms of regulatory approval and supply, that would be wonderful, right? Because the storage requirements are much different. It enables you to do a lot more distribution, and it enables you to distribute through a lot more channels, and including the ones that we're familiar with, like primary care providers and pharmacies and things like that. And so, when we get a very stable vaccine in high supply, we can start moving to a bunch of different distribution models as needed. So, cases, variants, vaccines, that's what I have for you today.
Questions? Lonnie? Sorry, Councillor Napper. You are muted, just so you know.
There you go. I was just curious, are the testing levels dropping off? It seems to me that all of a sudden we're getting the results back within a day, a lot of cases, and are we
Did you read the note I got?
pardon?
Okay.
Sorry, Lisa, maybe you can, thank you. Go on, Councillor Napper.
Yeah, so has the testing dropped off, or are we just getting more efficient? It seemed to me at 1%, one time we were at 8% of tests were coming back within 24 hours, and we were really low at that, I thought at the time. But now it seems to me it's turned around, like it was getting up 6-7 days.
Yeah, and Councillor, I would say I'm not aware of any specific changes that have been made to the capacity, but I think that, in terms of the overall lab capacity, but what I've said before, and we've talked about this, is that it's a constantly changing situation, right? It is a consequence of the demand at any given time, as well as the capacity in the labs. I haven't seen the capacity at the labs changing much yet, although there may be, information that I don't have on that. And then in terms of the demand side, I think it's still, it fluctuates constantly, right? If there's a new outbreak, a lot of people want to get tested. If things are more stable, fewer people are getting tested. Plus there's the what should I call it? The baseline routine testing that is happening for places like long-term care, right? So that's kind of steady amount of demand. So the answer to your question is that it varies at any given time because the demand is fluctuating all the time.
Okay, anyone else have questions? Councillor Weaver and then Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Chair Jackie, through you to Dr. Ranaday. I'm getting questions and emails about people, where's the vaccines, where do we go, and all that, and I'm directing them to the Lambton Public Health website. They're concerned, I guess, of, are we going to the community centers, are we going to the shores up here in Lambton Shores, or where the testing will be? I just make sure that the municipality is quite willing to help. And I know that you're working on a plan. Is there anything else I can be telling these people of where to go? I directed them to the vaccines website. And so that's, I think that's all we can do right now. I know we're working on it. I know there's going to be a plan in place right now. There's no vaccines for the general public. But.
Yep, and so send them to us, and they can always call us with their questions. And for sure, we get that people are sort of like, oh, we're hearing about these vaccines, where are we going to be able to get them? There's two pieces to the answer to that question. One is that, there's sort of two models that we're planning for, and both of them are workable, but they really depend on the kind of vaccine you get. So if you get a vaccine that is really finicky, so I'm going to call the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines very finicky, you want to limit the number of distribution sites and get a bunch of people to those sites. And so we're planning for having sites throughout the county so that people don't have to go too far from any given place, but people might have to take a short drive to get that, right? If you get a vaccine that's less finicky, like the more fridge stable vaccines, AstraZeneca, and if you get just a bunch of AstraZeneca, then you could start to use very traditional distribution models, which actually might start to mean that people could get it through their pharmacy, they could get through their own healthcare provider, something that's much closer to home, and use the distribution and delivery services that we already kind of use for things like flu vaccines. So because we don't really know which way that's going and we don't have a sense of that, it's hard to tell people right now, you'll be able to do this or you'll be able to do that. It really, really does depend on what kind of vaccines the province starts to push out en masse, and then how we structure the plan according to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradley, you had a question?
Yeah, Doctor, a question from the public that came in. I'm not advocating this, but the question was this. If there's a major outbreak, the example that was being used was the Sarnia jail, that obviously has an impact on the numbers. When the recommendations go to the province, to the Medical Officer of Health, on changing the color codes, you know, that we're in orange right now, this could push us into red. Does it go with any disclaimer about the nature of the outbreaks, or whether it may be in the community? So there's an understanding of the nature of the outbreak, not just a mass rise in infections in the general community?
Yes, good question. So one thing, just remember that cases are allocated to jurisdictions based on their primary place of residence. So that's, you know, so it's possible even, for example, that if we had a number of cases that were attributed to us by people who live here but weren't physically here, maybe students off at university or something like that, they still count as our cases. But then there is a mechanism when we talk to the province about the numbers and where they're going and what they're planning to do, to give them some of that contextual information. So we have been giving them that. They've been asking for sort of qualitative reports on what you know, to inform some of those decisions. And so they're definitely sort of aware of those kinds of situations when they make the decision. Certainly in our most recent conversation, I did say, you know, one, we just opened up on Tuesday, which is yesterday, and also the number of cases that we're seeing is really linked into these outbreaks that we are aware of, and so that you know, I did raise that point with them, so they're aware.
Okay, can I just a follow-up question? So just so we understand the process, so every Thursday, say, for example, you send the numbers in and they make a decision on Friday, you know, based on what's happened in the past, with Monday sort of being the D-Day on changing codes and stuff. Is there is it bang, 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 week after week, you send the numbers in, they make their judgment?
I would say that the process is consistently shifting. There's very much, you know, it's changes a lot over time. And I think the most recent process is that somewhere in the middle of the week, they talk to Cabinet, and Cabinet plans out a decision that may be changed by last minute or late breaking information, and then they announce it. But I haven't seen a consistent structure to that since, you know, the last time we were midway through the response framework. So I would hesitate to tell you that it works in a specific way, because that way keeps changing. But certainly there are routine conversations at least weekly about what's happening locally, and what, you know, is there any contextual information that they need to know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Renaday? Okay, I have been informed that Bob Bailey is going to be joining us as well this morning. Is Bob on the line, or?
Yeah, I thought he was going to be, Jackie. He had an announcement he was going to make, and but he did say he was also tied up with house duties, so maybe he didn't make it after all.
No problem. We can let Dr. Renaday go. Oh, Lisa's saying that he's logging in now, so we will hold on to that. Do we need Dr. Renaday for that announcement? Word of Marriott?
It might be good for the doctor to hear it. Shouldn't be too long.
There he is.
Yeah, apologize. Can everybody hear me there?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
The most famous 4 words of this year in 2020. Can you hear me? Anyway, well, thank you. And I apologize, I'm late getting here. I had a committee meeting already this morning, and then I'm in the house on house duty, but I did get permission to slip out. And I said I got some very important people to talk to, so they gave me permission to leave. So anyway, thank you, Warden. Thank you, Warden, for making time for me here this morning. And it won't take too long, but it's a good news announcement, and that's why I wanted to communicate it to all of you directly. And I apologize to Ms. Colasanti and Andrew Taylor. I didn't have a chance to call them directly, but it really involves their area. So essentially, I won't read the big press announcement, I'll just give it to you straight. The county paramedics program has been fully funded for another $2,843,000 for paramedicine. And this is initiated by long-term care. So this money is coming directly out of the Ministry of Long-Term Care. And it's to keep seniors out of hospital while they're waiting long-term care beds. As we know, there's a waiting list, and they can speak more fully to that. I think we all know there's probably at least 200 on the list, give or take one or two. So this will let these seniors stay in their home. The paramedics will, I know we piloted a program 2 or 3 years ago, and it was such a success that the province took it up across the province. So this is additional money to provide those kind of services through Ms. Colasanti and through Andrew Taylor's. I don't know where the chips fall, who does what, but I know it probably comes under their bailiwick. So Warden Marriott, I appreciate the opportunity to, I think this is good news for everybody, for all the mayors on here. And of course, Dr. Ranady, if we can keep people out of our hospitals and that until we find long-term care beds for them and keep them healthy in their own homes. I think that's where seniors want to be. They don't want to be in hospital. And, you know, if they can avoid it as long as they can, they don't want to go to long-term care either. And so I think this kind of squares that circle. So I know you got a lot of things to cover this morning. I don't have a lot of answers for you over and above that, but if there is any questions, I'll try and answer them. But like I said, the ministry will be officially communicating with your service heads and of course the mayors sometime later today, but they asked me to call and tell you this directly. So anyway, you got it right from I'll say the horse's mouth, not maybe something someone else would say. Some of my friends on there.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for taking time out of your house duties.
Yeah, well, hey, I've heard all that stuff before, so it's kind of refreshing to talk to you guys.
Well, that's good. And so the way we're set up this morning, the AM committee now and then PM committees at 11, but we will, I know it was hard for you to be, and our 10 o'clock budget meeting is going to take the full hour. That's where everybody's here, but we'll make sure that we relay
please.
That message. Thanks again.
Yeah, so the amount again was $2,843,000. I think that was it. And like I say, you'll officially sometime after later today, probably through Ron Van Horn, Mr. Van Horn, and others, you'll receive official notification of that. So anyway, with that, I'll, unless somebody's got some question that I can't answer, I'll let you go, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks
everybody.
so much, Bob.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bob.
and everybody stay safe, okay, everybody? Thank
You too. All right, so that was a good news announcement from our MPP. Does anybody have any last minute questions for Dr. Renaday before I let him go? All right, thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us this morning, and we'll let you get on with your day.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will move on in the agenda to 4. We have for Infrastructure and Development Services Division, we have 2 correspondences to receive and file. Moved by Councillor Hand, seconded by Councillor Beans. Do you want to do both of those together? Yes, thank you. And is there any questions on either of those correspondence? Councillor Hand, you're muted, just so you're aware.
Sorry, I just wasn't sure if there was expected some kind of response or discussion regarding the second item on Conservation Authority. So if anybody has an opinion, otherwise I'd move the 2 of them together.
Jason or Mr. Cole, do you want to address that?
Through you, Chair Roundabout. We do have some scheduling planned for the conservation authorities to attend our April council meeting. And I think that they would be certainly in the best position to update us on the status of their changes and how those impacts are planning to affect them.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no other questions. All in favor of receiving and filing those? That is carried. And we have several information reports on the agenda here. How does council want to deal with those information reports all together or one at a time? Councillor Bean?
I would think we can move them all together and just receive and file.
Okay. Do we have a seconder to that? Councillor Napper? And does anyone have any questions or comments on any of those information reports? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving and filing? That is carried. We will move on to C, which is a report requiring a motion. The County Road 28 no parking restrictions report. We need a mover and a seconder to have that report put on the floor. Councillor Weber and Warden Marriott.
I would move the recommendation in that report.
Okay, any questions or comments on that report? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Cole. We're going to move on to Public Health Services Division. We have several correspondence in that division. Do we want to move or receive and file all of those together?
So moved.
Thank you. And to seconder, Councillor Hand. Questions or comments on any of those reports? All in favor? That is carried. And we'll go down to information reports. There's two in that section. One is the COVID-19 activities update report, and the other is the response to service employees international union correspondence dated February 8th. Councillor Beans, did you want to move those together?
Yes.
Thank you. And to seconder, Councillor Miller. Any questions or comments on those information reports? Councillor Bradley.
Yes, I believe we've had two pieces of correspondence from the one group. I think we need an in-camera discussion on the issues that are raised in that correspondence, instead of simply receiving and filing, including the latest letter that came in, I think, yesterday. Some very serious allegations being made related to personnel in those letters. And I think we're obligated to follow up on that.
Okay.
That could be a separate issue than receiving and filing these letters.
Councillor Hand.
I just wanted to say I appreciated the response to the allegations or to the issues raised within their letters that comes in our package today, because I know I didn't have the inside knowledge of how, how they all work. So the information that was provided by the county was helpful, but I agree we could have an in-camera discussion over the information that we were provided.
Now, I'm not sure if logistically we can do that this morning, since it's not on the agenda. I don't believe we can, but perhaps at the next council meeting, it could be.
Yeah, I wasn't intending it for it to be today, but Mayor Bradley, I don't know what your thoughts were.
When this motion's voted on, then I'll bring a motion to have a discussion for the full council at the next in-camera. I think it's March the 3rd.
Okay. Thank you. So we will be dealing with that again in the future, but we will receive and file these information reports. All in favor? That is carried. And we have one report requiring a motion, the Student Nutrition Program Food Funding Report. Councillor Bradley?
I wanted to move a motion that we, on the record, move a discussion on the information raised in those two letters to the next in-camera, March the 3rd.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I think that's seconded by Bev Hand. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. So that will be on the record then. We will go on to the Student Nutrition Program. Moved by Councillor Napper, seconded by Councillor Beans. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We are going to move on to Cultural Services Division. We have 3 information reports on the agenda for there. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file. That's moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Beans. Councillor Bird, did you have a question or were you just?
No, I was just seconding, but
Thank you.
to it.
No problem. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Bradley?
Yes, we're in the section right now where we're in the section right now where we're talking about the Canatera cabin relocation.
I believe this
Yes.
yes.
Well, I just want to raise the question. This was a fairly torturous process at the city level back last term. But the belief was the cabinet this had to be replicated and not, it couldn't be restored. And that led to what happened with this coming to the county. And now it would appear that it can't be restored. If you look at the numbers in there that I'm looking at, once they got in there, it was what was predicted. It wasn't stable enough to move intact. And now I see, and I presume this is a new number, an additional 100,000. So I just would like clarification on that.
Mr. Meyer, can you enlighten us on that?
Absolutely. Through you, Chair Roundabout. Great question, Councillor Bradley. The cabin can be restored. In short, it could not be safely relocated intact. That was the challenge. When they got into the disassembly, the initial approach was to remove the roof section in its entirety and then move the lower structure, the building itself, in one piece. And then the easiest approach would be to connect the 2 pieces. Unfortunately, given the state of the cabin's deterioration, it was not structurally stable enough to move the lower section of the building as one piece. So the intended approach shifted, and they went back to removing log by log and tagging log by log the entire cabin for reassembly. Now, to your point, much of it cannot be utilized. There's a lot of logs that will need to be replaced, but it can be restored. There's a lot of architectural elements that remain sound and can be used for the reconstruction of the cabin. In terms of the cost estimate that's proposed there, that is based on a few estimates that were obtained both by the county and the Canatera cabin restoration group, the volunteer group that's involved. That estimate was known to the county prior to the transfer agreement between the county and the city. We knew that there was a cost associated with that, and the volunteer community group has committed to fundraising for that 100,000 that you see that. So that is not a new amount to us. It just represents the full cost of reassembling the structure and some of the other considerations with having it accessed safely by the public at the Lambton Heritage Museum.
Okay, if I could ask a follow-up. How much has been raised towards the 100,000?
I believe we're just over, through you, Madam Chair, to answer the question, we're just over 14,000 that the group has raised since the last week of November. So just over 2 months. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions, we will call the vote to receive and file. That is carried. And we have one report requiring a motion, the Collections Management and Donation Report. Moved by Councillor Beans, seconded by Councillor Weber. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Weber, did you want to speak to that?
I just think that all of these things added to the museum are great, and I would like to try to somehow confiscate medical officer's health headset when this COVID is over, because it has been a part of him turning the volume up every day, and I think it needs to be kept for eternity.
I would second that. I think that's a very good idea.
Duly noted.
All right.
But maybe
Councillor Napper?
we stuff them and put them with it?
It has been a challenging year. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We're going to move on to Corporate Services Division. There's a correspondence from member municipalities here. Councillor Bradley, you are muted, sir.
I'm going to move that we instruct city and county staff to work together on the Skits property to look at other opportunities for that property, as per the letter.
Do we have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Bird, discussion? Councillor Weber.
Question, if I can, maybe through to Stefan. So, is there anything stopping the city from going ahead and buying this property on their own? What's the process here with that? And the city seems determined to have this. I don't want to stand in their way.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think the property, as I understand it from the school board, the property will be, generally marketed. The opportunity or the period where you had exclusive sort of right as a public sector organization, both the county and the city, expired some time ago. But to go to, so that's the answer. There's really nothing at this point in time that either stops the county and or the city to pick up the property or any other party other than the process that, the disposition process that the school board has got to go through. But in the meantime, to go directly to Councillor Bradley's question, we've committed already with the city on an informal basis to keep communicating over that property, and same with the school board to keep all three parties engaged and informed over the status of that property. So we're all keeping an eye on what's going on with the property and what its future may be.
Councillor Bradley?
I appreciate that, Mr. Thibault, but what we're looking for is real commitment. It's sort of equated to the, bacon and eggs. The chickens are sort of committed. It's the pig that makes the real commitment. And in this case, I think the county needs to say, look, let's explore some opportunities here. There may be other things on the horizon post-COVID that would be good for both of us. It doesn't bind either party. And to Mayor Weber's comments, the city isn't totally committed to it. We're trying to find a way to keep the building in our historical stock and trying to find some way to make it a community hub. And there's a number. In fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow with some people on the issue. We just want to have a heavier commitment from the county that came in the city council letter of January the 19th to just keep real commitment from both the county and the city to explore every option before we sign off on the property.
Councillor Veens.
So wouldn't it be better just to let somebody in the private sector buy it, and then we could maybe have the land on the back severed off after and deal with it that way, Mike?
Yeah, good question. At this point, there's not a long lineup of people to buy the property, is my understanding. There's lots of individual groups, and including Vision Nursing Home, not for a nursing home purpose, but for other purposes, and they're driving this process. So I guess what I'm just saying is let's keep the door as wide open as we can, have the city and county steer the process, because we have some very talented people and resources. And if it doesn't work in 3 months, 6 months, we sign off. But we do everything we can to explore all these other opportunities. And for example, I'd like the county to be part of some of the discussions going on with city staff so that they see what opportunities are out there. And that, I think this motion would bring that about.
Any other questions or comments? Is staff clear on the motion before we vote on it? Since it differs from what's on the agenda?
Well, absolutely. We understand everybody's interests at stake in those lines. Like I said, lines of communications are fully open, and we've had three-party discussions with the school board, the city, and ourselves, and we know the interest that lies, at least with the city and with the county with respect to that property.
Okay, everyone in favor of that motion? That is carried. We will move on to information reports. We need a sorry, that was the end of that, I believe. Did we receive and file the other information report or correspondence? No, we did not. All right, we need a motion to receive and file that. Moved by Councillor Hand, seconded by Councillor Miller. All in favor? That is carried. And we have no in-camera this morning, so we will go right to the adjournments. Moved by Councillor Veen, seconded by Councillor Napper. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. We will see you again at the next meeting at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.